Hello people, welcome to the channel. John the Biker here. Today you're joining me on this absolutely stunning day up here in Scotland, and today is actually a good day and a sad day, because today I'm saying goodbye to my Honda CB500X and collecting my new bike in about an hour's time. I'm not going to tell you what it is, you need to wait to the next video and see what it is. So I said I was going to do a review on this bike, but I've just never got around to doing it. In the last couple of weeks, months, I've been extremely busy with work and family life. I've also given myself a bit of an injury, not on the bike, thankfully. I was doing something else, not bike related, and I believe I've cracked a few ribs. So I've not really done that much riding the last month or so. But what I want to do today is I just want to talk to you about this bike. Now, I bought this bike back in January of this year, so I've only had it coming up for 6 months, and when I first bought it, the idea was to only have it about 6 months, to be fair. When I passed my full bike license, I didn't want to jump on something too big too quick. I think I've explained that in previous videos. I wanted to take my time because up until March last year I had never ridden a motorcycle, so I like to think I'm a bit cautious, and I like to take my time. I like to make sure I'm capable before committing myself to something. So I didn't really want to get a big massive bike, too powerful, until I felt like I was used to like a mid-range bike. So about a week ago I decided that I was going to trade this in for something a little bit bigger. Now don't get me wrong, it's not going to be nothing like extremely faster, but it is a bigger bike. But anyway, this bike, so 6 months I've had it, and I've absolutely loved it. I really am a bit sad to see it go. I wanted to keep this bike for my wife-to-be. She rides a motorcycle. She's still only on her CBT just now, but she just didn't like it very much. So I decided I would just part with it then. Now, in the 6 months I've had it, I've had absolutely zero problems with the bike. The bike's done everything I've asked it to do. Now, in that 6 months I've done probably about 2,500 to 3,500 miles, somewhere in between that bracket, and I've went some long runs on the bike. I've went away for the weekends on the bike. I've had pillion away on long journeys, and we even went camping for the weekend on the bike. So yeah, it's been really good for all that kind of stuff. Obviously I've had no problems with it whatsoever. I have done a few upgrades to the bike, and some people will probably say, what was the point if you were only keeping it for 6 months? Well, the reason I done the upgrades was pure and simple. I wanted to learn how to do things myself. I'm not mechanically minded, and whenever it came to doing car repairs, things like that, I used to always just pay someone to do it. But when I got the bike, I decided that I wanted to learn to do things myself, and I've done that. Now, in the short time that I had the bike, I learned how to service it myself. I learned how to change the chain, sprockets, amongst other things. I've also added screens and handguards, USB sockets, and changed the tyres. So yeah, I've not learned really difficult stuff, but you've got to start somewhere, right? And that's what I did. So like I said, it's time for it to go, but I have really enjoyed the bike. Now, things that I have enjoyed about the bike is the fact that it is so easy to ride. Now I've ridden lots of bikes now. The biggest bike I've ridden to date is probably the Africa Twin, when I say big, I mean like the physically big. So the Africa Twin's definitely up there. It's probably the biggest bike I've ridden, all the way down to obviously 125s. But when you sit on this bike and start to ride it, I notice a huge difference between the 125 and obviously for the power of it. But when I go out on test rides on the Africa Twin, the new V-Strom, things like that, they're quite physically big bikes. They're quite hard. Well, not hard, but you know, you really need to lug it around a little bit, especially when you're not sitting on it, you're pushing it around. So the things I like about the Honda CB500X, and there is quite a few of them, I'll probably miss things, but I think you'll get the general gist of what I'm trying to say. So, for me, as a new rider, I think this bike was the perfect bike. It's not as big as, say, the Africa Twins and bikes like that, but it's certainly a lot bigger than all 125s. And for somebody of my height and my weight, I think this is absolutely perfect. Don't get me wrong, I do have a little bit of a complaint about the way my leg sits on the bike. I do get a little bit of cramp in my knees, but I can live with that. It's not terrible. It doesn't make me not want to ride the bike. But in general, someone like me who'd never ridden a bike before and is quite tall, I'm not that heavy, I'm about 80 kilos, so it was a perfect size for me. Now the power of the bike. Now most of the time when I'm going around, I don't usually do a lot of motorway miles because you've probably never seen me on the motorway, but I don't usually do the motorway. I don't like the motorway. I think it's boring. But most of the time I'm scooting around little country lanes or in town, and I tend to stay in about third gear most of the time. Most of the power is in third gear, and for real world speeds this bike is great. I can beat most things off the line if I'm trying to overtake things, and it's nice and light and agile to filter through traffic. Now again, I don't do a lot of filtering, simply because it's something that I'd never did until a few months ago. I am getting more used to it and I am doing it a bit more, but if I don't need to do it, I don't do it. If I'm not in any rush or that, I'm quite happy just to sit there. So the overall dimensions of the bike is perfect for me and as a new rider. There's nothing complicated about this bike. It's simple, you know. It's there's no fancy electronic gizmos, and again, that's something that doesn't really interest me, or didn't interest me until I started test riding bikes with lots of electronic gizmos. What I mean by electronics is these new fancy TFT monitors. They look great, but I also think they're quite distracting. Now I went a test ride on a Tiger 900 a few weeks back, and absolutely loved the bike. The bike was fantastic, but the electronics kind of annoyed me a little bit, because I kept accidentally hitting the buttons. Now I know probably over time that I would stop doing that, but it was a bit of a distraction. Every time I touched a button by mistake, it changed the monitor. Now I think it's a good feature that you can do that, you know, because everybody can make it their own then, but also very distracting. Like, there was a button here, it was like a toggle button, and every time I went for the indicator I'd nudge it a little bit with my big fingers, and the whole screen would change. So yeah, it distracted me a lot. Other things that electronics I'm talking about is things like ABS, traction control, rider modes, suspension setups, things like that. Again, in theory, they're all good things. I don't have a major issue with them, but I don't really know what I'm doing at this point when it comes to traction controls and things like that. Yeah, the suspension thing, that would be pretty handy. It saves me from adjusting it every time I'm taking my son or my daughter out or running the bike. But anyway, this bike has none of that. So it's just a simple LCD screen. It's got a trip count meter on it, a speedo, fuel gauge and a rev counter. What else do you need? Nothing to distract me. There's no rider modes, anything like that. It's just simple switch gear, lights, horn, indicators, start, stop, hazard lights. That's it. So as a beginner rider, this bike has very little distractions on it. The only thing I've put on that could possibly be a distraction on this bike is these heated grips, which haven't been turned on in months. But obviously I bought this bike in January, when right in the middle of winter, so they were quite handy then. And I'm going to be honest, the first thing I'm going to buy for my new bike is heated grips for the winter. So weather protection on this bike. So I'm a bit of a wuss when it comes to the cold. I don't like the cold. And I didn't really particularly like the rain either. But the thing that I hate the most is wind, especially riding the motorbike. I absolutely hate the wind, especially with strong winds, obviously. So the weather protection, the reason I got this type of bike was with that in mind, was thinking about how's the weather going to affect me. Now, when I bought the bike, I'm going to be honest, I didn't do much research. I just seen the bike, I could afford the bike, so I bought the bike. And I knew there was obviously a bit of weather protection on it. But I didn't really do many reviews, didn't watch too many reviews. In fact, I think I only watched 1 or 2 reviews, and it was on the new 2020 bike. So obviously a bit different from this one. This one's a 2014. But anyway, so the original screen, the wind screen that comes with the bike standard, is very small. It's only about like this height, and I found that the wind was, or the buffering was hitting me right around the neck area and lifting my chin up when I was riding along. So I changed the screen to this. I forget the size of it, but this tall give screen. The other thing that I bought were these hand guards, knuckle guards. Now, in my stupidity, I thought these were going to keep the wind off my hands perfectly. Again, didn't really do my homework. These were a lot of money. These were I think they were about £90 or something like that. And I could have got ones a lot cheaper. But I thought, you know, I'd been reading a bit about Giveaway, and they seem to be very popular, and I thought, yeah, I'll get them, they'll be good, but to be honest, they're not that great, to be honest. I know now that they're not really designed just for keeping the wind off. I think it's more for keeping gravel and that coming off and hitting you in the knuckles, things like that. I'm sure they do keep quite a bit of the wind off my hands, but not to the point where my hands don't get cold, and hence why I put the heated grips on. So that was kind of pointless for me. Other parts of the weather protection on this bike is obviously the fairing on it. Now, the fairing it's not massive, you know, but it's big enough. It does keep the majority of the wind and the weather or the elements off of me. I don't, if I'm riding and it starts to rain and stuff, it does protect me a fair wee bit. Not perfect, but it does enough. And you know, this screen in itself is probably the best part of the bike, obviously, where it's keeping most of the, like when I'm going along, I get a little bit of buffering on my shoulders, but that's really about it. Now I wear a peaked helmet, and it keeps the wind off of me, but if I move my head a bit to the left or a bit to the right, the peak catches the wind and you know, kind of pushes my head back a little bit. But that's more to do with my helmet rather than the screen. I can take the peak off this helmet, and I sometimes do that, and it's so much better for the wind buffering. So yeah, the weather protection on this bike wasn't particularly great, but you know, it was enough once I upgraded a few parts of it. So the comfort of the bike. Now, I've read and I've seen different reviews now on the bike, and the comfort seems to be the 50-50 split with people. Some people say it's good, some people say it's terrible. Now, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm kind of right in the middle. I don't think it's terrible, and I don't think it's great. Now, I could have spent some money and bought a comfier seat for the bike, but they were really expensive, so I thought I'm not doing that. Because I was only thinking about this about 2 months ago, and I kind of made my mind up then that I was going to be changing the bike soon. So the comfort of the bike itself, I think it's not bad, but it's not great. The seat is soft enough. I don't actually have any problems with the seat, I think, and that's another reason why I didn't actually upgrade the seat, because I don't think the problem with the comfort comes from the seat. My problem is I've got quite long legs, and I think that's where the comfort problem comes with, for me anyway, is my legs are they're at a really funny angle. It's almost like a sports bike. That's what I feel like sometimes, and I get a lot of cramp sometimes in my knees, and maybe creeping a bit into my hips. Just stuck in that position for a little while. Now, when I go out riding, I can go out for hours on end, but I tend not to ride for more than, say, 2 hours at one time. I'll always stop. And the reason for that is because my legs start to cramp up. Now, it's not so bad that I don't want to ride the bike, but it's a fact that there is a bit of discomfort in my legs. The way that I sit on the bike is quite comfortable, so my back's fairly straight. I'm slightly forward, I guess, not much, just very slightly forward, and my arms are fairly wide apart. Now, I thought my arms are really wide apart with the handlebars when I came off with the 125, but when I went out in the Africa Twin, I thought it's nothing. I mean, this is probably in the middle, maybe slightly longer than the middle, but it's still a comfortable position. I feel the handlebars might be a little bit high, because when I'm riding along, I need to tuck my elbows in to avoid them filling the mirrors. Now, I've tried moving the mirrors loads of different ways to try and avoid that, but I can't. I think it's just the way my arms are sitting. So I definitely need to find something to adjust that. Now, on my new bike, I noticed straight away that I don't see my elbows. I can see a little bit of the top of my arms, that's about it. That's just an annoying thing for me. I just think the handlebars could have been doing with being a little bit lower maybe. And that's about it for the comfort, I think. And the seating position, it's a fairly upright position. So it's slightly forward and my arms are fairly wide apart. My only complaint is my legs do get a little bit cramped. So riding the bike. So this bike is a 500X, like I said at the start, but I believe it's a 471cc with about 48 horsepower. I could be wrong with the figures there, but I'm pretty sure it's 48. The bike itself, like I said earlier, first, second and third gear, lots of power. Up to about 60-70 miles an hour, and then it starts to bog down a little bit. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. But the power does start to ebb in fourth and fifth gear, and then in sixth gear, then obviously that's just for motorway speeds, I guess. But no, the power on it I think it's great. It's in the low gears, it's just instant. Now, I ride with guys on bigger bikes, and I can keep up with them when pulling away. Obviously, if they want to leave me, they leave me. But initially, I can definitely keep up. And in fact, I think in some ways I'm a bit faster and getting away. So the engine is definitely punchy enough for that kind of stuff. The gearbox itself, so I think it's just a standard 6-speed gearbox. I think that's what they call it. It's just standard. Everything's 6 gears now. So 1 down, 5 up. It's a bit clunky. It was a bit worrying at first, but then I got told that was perfectly okay. And yeah, I've not had any issues with the gearbox. Gears change okay. The only thing I've had a few times is maybe I go into neutral by mistake. I've done that more when I've got somebody on the back. I don't know if it's just because I'm being more careful, or I don't know what's going on. But I tend to go into neutral by mistake a lot when I've got somebody riding on the back with me. Now the fuel economy on the bike, the bike does come with trip meters, like I says. It's also got the average mile to the gallon and your current miles to the gallon. Now I don't tend to leave it on that setting because I don't want to watch it. The way I look at it is the bike costs me about anything between about £20 to fill it if I'm almost empty, depending on where I go, and I get about 220-230 miles. So if I can get 200 to 230 miles with a full tank, I'm happy with that. I don't think I can really complain, remembering that up until last year I'd never ridden a motorcycle. I'd only driven cars and some bigger vehicles. So yeah, that's brilliant for me. So that's something a lot of people will consider when they're thinking about buying a motorbike. Like the fuel economy. Now I looked at other ones, I know there's better than this, but as an all-rounder I think that has to be taken into consideration. Now the actual running cost of this bike, I was quite surprised as well. So the road tax, I think it was less than £100 for the year, but the main one was the insurance. Now I appreciate everybody's insurance is going to be based on their circumstances and no claims and things like that, but based on myself, like I said, I do have a car licence. I have driven a long time. I've been driving cars and bigger vehicles for over 20 years. So I shopped around. I was really surprised when I saw, do you have a car? Do you have no claims in your car? And I was like, yep. And it brought my insurance down quite a bit. So with my insurance, with maximum no claims on the car and 1 year on the 125 obviously, on this bike it cost me about £135 for the full year. Obviously the excess on that was fairly high, but let's face it, that's going to be the same for anybody. Now to service the bike, I did the service myself. Like I said earlier on, I changed all the filters, changed the oil, changed the spark plugs. Now don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy to get this into the spark plugs, but everything else is fairly simple. And to be honest, I probably didn't need to do the spark plugs, but like I wanted to learn, I wanted to see how it was done, so I did everything myself. And I think the full service kit, so for the I think it's 3.5 litres of oil or 4 litres of oil that I put in the bike, the spark plugs, the filters, it came to less than £90 I believe, but it did take a bit of time, especially for the spark plugs, because you then need to take all the fairing off and the petrol tank. But once it was done, it was, I was quite happy that I'd managed it all myself. So £90 and probably about 2.5 hours of my time, maybe slightly longer. Now general maintenance of the bike, so you've got your obvious ones, so you're checking your brakes and your tyres and stuff like that. But chain maintenance itself is fairly simple. So yeah, nothing complicated. I changed the sprocket and chain on my bike about 3 months ago. because a friend of mine says that the rear sprocket was looking a bit worn. So I ordered the sprocket for the back wheel, and then he was like, oh well, you're doing that, you may as well do everything else. So I did, and the actual changing of the sprockets was fairly simple, nothing complicated at all, but trying to break that chain was a bit of a hassle for me, simply because I didn't know what I was doing. Obviously I knew I had to split the chain, but trying to get that chain split was a bit harder than on your push bike. And I think that in my head that's all I was thinking, it was like a push bike. But no, I needed the grinder and the riveting tool and stuff like that. But once I got that done, it was nice and simple. I was happy to see there was a couple of options for the chain. There's split links and the actual riveted links. So when I put the chain back on, I just put the split link on it. Looked a bit iffy to begin with at first, but then once I read a little bit about it, most of my worries were gone. But the general maintenance of the bike, it's an older bike, it's a simple bike, it's a popular bike, there's loads of them going around, so parts are fairly cheap. So my overall final conclusion of this bike is I like it. I love this bike. I really wish I could keep it. I really wish I could afford to own more than one bike just now, but I really can't. And worst of all, I don't have the space for it. But I really feel like I'm ready to move on to something a little bit bigger, a little bit more powerful. So there's no point in me hanging on to this. I got offered a good deal on the bike. When I walked into the showroom and I asked the guy about it, his exact words were, "That kind of bike's my bread and butter. I'll always sell them." The only issue was it was a little bit older than what he expects it to be when he's buying these bikes. But because of the condition of the bike, like this bike is spotless, there's not a mark on it. It's never been dropped, as far as I know. Never been dropped in the time I've had it. But there's no broken parts on the bodywork, there's no bashes, there's no scrapes, nothing like that. The bike looks like it could go back into the Honda showroom today with a little bit of a clean. So that's the only reason. That's the reason it's going. It's in such good condition. I'm getting offered good money for it now, so I'm going to take it. But if I had the space and I could afford to run 2 or 3 bikes, I would absolutely keep this bike 100%. And I think the biggest recommendation you can give to anything is, would I let my children ride one of these bikes? Absolutely. And then probably the second most important thing about a motorcycle, and what I've found in the last year and a half, 2 years, is how does it make you feel? This bike makes me feel great every time I ride on it. I've got a huge grin on my face, and I think that, and it's if I'm having a bad day or whatever, I can just jump on this and just go for a ride, and I come back and my head's clear. Now that could be probably true of any bike, but I have to base it on this one, and it always does it. I've always got a smile on my face. Yeah, absolutely fantastic bike. I am going to actually miss this, but at the same time I am so much looking forward to my new bike. Well, anyway, if you've stuck around and listened to me rabbiting on a little bit, I appreciate it. If you've got any comments, anything you want to know about the bike that I might have missed out, please ask, I will answer you. And the next video I'm going to be doing will probably be maybe a short review of the new bike, maybe a first impressions review or something like that, because I'm literally going to drop this bike off in about 10-15 minutes, do the paperwork and be riding out on my new bike. Now I don't know if I'll do it today, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Hit the like button if you liked the video, leave a comment, subscribe, whatever, and I'll see you next time. Ride safe.